Jesus tells a story of two owner builders, and he describes one as wise and one as a fool. Well, that's not very nice. That's not very Christian. My mum told me that if I couldn't say something nice about someone, then don't say anything at all, right? But see, Jesus wasn't talking about an individual. He was talking about a group of people. He was dividing those who are listening to what he was saying into two groups. It had nothing to do with their house design, the colour of their roof, even what their house was built out of. Had everything to do with the foundation material that they were choosing to build upon. And I find it interesting that in the story Jesus told, both owner builders experienced the same harsh weather conditions as each other. Jeremy had an amazing experience this week, camping where winds were so strong that some of the tents got just blown over, but one tent with someone in it got blown away. And Jeremy was doing everything he could to keep his tent anchored to the ground. Are you slightly heavier than the other bloke, Jeremy? Just asking, just a smidge? Yep. Pays to be heavy, right? But Jesus never promised us to be protected from the storms. Both experienced the same harshness of reality. But here's the thing, one was destroyed, and it says, and it fell with a great crash. The Greek word fell, it literally means utter misery. It's a ruin that you bring upon yourself. And the word great, the Greek word that is used in the New Testament, it's the word megas. You know when we have a mega sale that's huge? Well, this word actually is an intensity of emotion. And what Jesus was saying, when this house crashes of the foolish person, there is so much intense emotion because the ruin is utter and it's devastating. And wisdom has nothing to do with accumulated knowledge. Mr. Google, he's not that wise. He knows a lot of stuff. But see, wisdom is not about knowledge, it's actually how you apply what you do know. Jesus is explaining to his audience about this story, and he says, this in verse 26 in Matthew, he says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. Fools don't hurt themselves or just hurt themselves. They hurt themselves, but they don't just hurt themselves. If you trust a fool, you're going to get hurt as well. And they don't do it on purpose. It's not deliberate. It's just what happens when their house crashes. If you're close proximity, you get hurt as well. And when everything that can come against you and does come against you, when that happens, Jesus says that the house of the wise will not fall, because we put our trust in a God who will never let us down. That's what my cousin in his darkest moments has been doing. He said it's just him and Jesus. That's all when you peel everything away. But Jesus also spoke of a second group of people, and he called them evil. And in Matthew chapter 12, he says, when evil is hidden within, those who are evil will produce evil fruit. In Matthew 7, he says, you can identify them by their fruit, that is, by the way that they act. Someone quite close, I won't mention their name, but it wasn't Cora and I, but in our family, just recently got scammed out of some of their hard-earned money by paying tolls that they didn't need to pay. Because they got a text message saying, you have, has anyone got those toll text messages? Yeah, mongrels. Well, that's an evil person because they don't care about you. All they care about is themselves. See, you and I live in this world that is training us to be sceptical, training us not to trust people, training us to not believe what we see and hear and read in a text message, or even videos, what AI can generate now. Like, we are being trained not to trust everything around us. Like, I know it might have been 6-8 months ago, but I got a phone call from someone in Melbourne from an institution, and they said, why won't you answer your emails? They said, we sent this email. We have a client. We're an investment company, and we have a client that has some money they want to give Redgum Church, and you're not interested. I said, we'll take it. And I said to Coral, what's happened? She said, Lauren and I saw we thought it was maybe a bit dodgy, a scam, someone trying to give Redgum Church. No, they were legitimate. But no, Miss Skeptical and the other Miss Skeptical, they weren't going to trust someone wanting to give us. I sorted it out and we got the money, right? We sorted it out. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's true. You did sort out the details when I directed you in the right direction. That's to be worked out. See, if I can be trusted, then time's our friend. We all know that over time, right? When God calls us to trust him, he says the benefits are huge. The rewards are huge when we trust him. And when he calls us to love one another, he also promises amazing benefits that will benefit us, that will benefit other people, that will benefit his kingdom. To love one another well, trust plays this really essential role. And it's not only just our capacity to trust, but it's also our own trustworthiness, which you're questioning. Plus, how we come back from trust betrayals. That's a big deal as well. Because our natural response is to withdraw, isn't it? It's to shut down. It's to sort of hold something back of ourselves and even stay in a place of judgment towards that person and justify why we're offended at them. But here's the thing. Jesus told us to seek first the culture of heaven, his kingdom, established in our life, lived through our life, and right relationship with the King. And then he commanded us to love one another. Look around. We're different. It's easy to love someone that believes the same, thinks the same, but to love people different to you. See, people nothing like Jesus. And if we're Jesus followers, then people nothing like us should love us, like us. And we have this command to love one another. It's an amazing concept that Jesus came up with. And when we do this well in village life, Jesus said that also one of the benefits is that our world will say, is there room in your village for me too? Now, I know people pray for revival, and I understand that. But Jesus never told us to pray for revival. He said, love well. Love each other well. That will work. And in the last part of Acts chapter 2, there's a picture of what this village life can look like, what the early church did. And at the end of that chapter, it says that these early Christians enjoyed the favour of the whole community around them. And it says that, and the Lord added to their number daily those who are being saved. In my early 30s, I really hurt my brother Jeff. I went through a period in our life where we lost everything we owned, and I left money owing to people, including Jeff. And I betrayed his trust in me. I owed him wages. He'd worked for us, and I didn't pay him. I couldn't pay him. And it caused a really big damage in our relationship with each other. And Jeff had to walk through a process of forgiveness towards me. And I'm sharing this because Jeff was okay for me to share this. But it was really hard for him, that process, because even though he forgave me, over the years after that, or the period of time after that, he would see how I spent my money that I never paid him. And it was hard for him to watch the choices that I made financially. So the process of forgiveness had to continue through that. But because of that forgiveness, our relationship was able to be put back together, to be reconciled. But that didn't mean that Jeff could trust me. About a few years before we left Sydney, maybe 7 years ago, we were in desperate need of a second vehicle, and I bought my ute back then, but we didn't have the money to buy a second vehicle. And Jeff initiated and asked me would I like to borrow the money from him to buy it. And we set up a payment plan, and I paid the money and then we're able to pay him off early and complete it. He could do that because he asked himself a question. Has Lex changed? Is he the same person as he was when he hurt and betrayed me? Let my trust down. See, my actions damaged our relationship as brothers, but the forgiveness that Jeff offered set up the potential for that reconciliation. See, it takes one person to forgive, but it takes two people for a relationship to reconcile. It takes the second person to recognise that what they've done to you is wrong. That you may initiate the forgiveness, but they've got to have an understanding that their behaviour has hurt you or others, that they're genuinely sorry, and that they don't make excuses, and they're transparent about the truth. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, Paul says this. He says that you and I have been reconciled to God through Jesus. But that's not the end of the story. God has given us the ministry of reconciliation. Isn't that an amazing gift? Reconciliation. Now, I did a quick Google search because Google knows a lot of stuff on the job description of a Christian. You would be amazed what's in the job description of a Christian that Jesus never included, that we, as in our church culture, have added in. Paul didn't have it. The New Testament writers didn't put all the stuff that's there. Central to everything in our identity as Jesus followers is a people who have been returned to God's favour. We've been reconciled to God. And that word reconciled, that original ancient Greek word, it means there's an exchange taking place. It's a picture of a money exchange system where we're exchanging currency from different countries, where you swap $16 Australian to get $10 American, right? It's an exchange, but someone works out the exchange rate, the value. One person sets up, initiates it, and the other person takes on what's offered. And God put a value on you and I, and then exchanged Jesus. He put the value on you, not you. He gave you value. He exchanged Jesus for you and I. It's his initiative. Forgiveness is his initiative. It enables reconciliation between us and God. And at best, we're responders. That's it. You know how you hear people say, oh, I was looking for God or I found God. No, he came looking for you. You just responded to the work of the Holy Spirit. And the words that Paul uses about this thing about ministry of reconciliation, it sounds official because it is. It's for all of us. It's what we're wired for. I caused really deep wounds in Jeff. I was sorry and I apologised, but he had to be willing to forgive for reconciliation to even be possible. And it took time and it was a process. Forgiveness is a process. And at some point, Jeff chose to no longer hang on to that offence. Now, at times in my life, Coral will tell you, I've been a fool. She's got lists of them on the fridge. But I've been a fool. I've made some really foolish choices, really foolish decisions. And I have hurt those close to me. For reconciliation to take place, it begins with one person. And if that's you, if you're the person that will initiate reconciliation, it begins with healing to a certain degree where you can get to a point in your healing when you can forgive. And then it moves from one person to two people. And the other person accepting forgiveness and acknowledging their part in the hurt that they've caused. But reconciliation does not mean, and don't miss this, it does not mean trust is restored or that trust is even possible or wise. The big question you've got to ask yourself first of all, before trust ever gets re-established, who are they now? When Jeff loaned me the money to get that ute, I wasn't the same person. Coral's not married to the same person she first married. We all have a capacity to grow and change. A foolish person will not accept responsibility that they've caused. They won't. In fact, they may even blame you or someone else for what's happened. And even when they're confronted and corrected, they become defensive and angry and may even verbally lash back at you. And they'll certainly criticise you to others. I think sometimes we forget how practical God is when it comes to these interpersonal relationships. And in Proverbs 9 verse 7 it says, if you correct someone who makes fun of wisdom, which is a fool, you'll be insulted. And if you correct an evil person, you'll get hurt. See, we could all become defensive at some times. About a week, 10 days ago, Coral and I had a fight. Now, I can't even remember what it was about, but I felt hurt, she felt hurt. Honestly, I can't remember what it was about, but I know that I did not de-escalate it. You can be quiet at that moment, Coral. That is not the moment to make any facial expressions or any noises, right? I was talking to Charlie Campbell this week at our Growing to Maturity course. And he reminded me of a verse that's precious to him. And I want to read it to you. It's in Proverbs 15 verse 1. And it says, a gentle answer will calm a person's anger. But an unkind answer, an unkind response will cause more anger. When I'm talking about foolish people, when the Bible talks about a fool, it's not a momentary response when we're triggered. We can all get cranky and fire up and, we can all do that. But it's when someone consistently reflects responsibility away from themselves for their actions. It's almost like they're blind to whatever they do. And even when you mirror it back to them, they can't see it. But don't give up on them because God doesn't. In Matthew chapter 18, God gives us these multiple steps, a process to responding when someone hurts you. And the first is actually to go one-on-one. That's it. Just one-on-one. And if they hear what you're saying and they respond well, like a wise person would, you both win. But if they don't keep talking to them about it. In fact, Jesus says to involve a third party, someone else. And if they are still defensive and they're blaming to you, then talking to them by yourself, it's just not going to help. And eventually in this process in Matthew 18, it gets to a point where Jesus says, if they're not going to receive even outside help, it could get to a place where you have to disconnect and walk away from that relationship. I want to add one more thought that Jesus throws into all this, and it's about this other group of people that Jesus calls evil, right? And to show you what Jesus says, I want to show you something that my granddaughter Brooklyn, who's 9, wants as a pet. Can we put that photo up? Thanks. She wants one of these, a Scottish Highland cow, but she wants a calf. Right? That's what she wants. That's her pet of choice. But when Jesus was talking to Jewish people about this other group of people, he chose an animal that a 9-year-old Jewish girl would not choose. He chose this animal. Can we throw that one up on the screen? He chose a pig. Because Jesus knew that the Jewish people avoided pigs. And he says, into a culture that did not like pigs, no matter how cute their little nose is and their little tail. And he says that don't share your precious things. What you value, what's important to you, your pearls, don't throw them before a little piglet, because those little piglets are going to trample it into the mud. They're going to take your precious stuff, your trust, and abuse it. In fact, Jesus actually ended up saying, and then turn and tear you to pieces. That's really clear. Jesus didn't, he's been really clear about this, what not to do with our precious stuff, our trust. See, foolish people don't mean to hurt you, but evil people will. And in Proverbs 24, it says, don't envy evil people or desire their company, for their hearts plot violence and their words always stir up trouble. With evil people, you've got to go into protection mode. Don't trust evil people. Don't be in business with, don't have a close, deep relationship with, because you'll get hurt. Trust is never an option. In a broken trust situation, working out who you're dealing with is a really big deal if you're going to step back into trusting that person. Because how else will you know whether trust should be reinstated? Both, yeah, right. But there is a third group of people that the Bible calls wise. Wise people can still let you down. But if you talk to a wise person about their behaviour towards you, how it's affected you or someone else, they will listen. And more than that, they will apologise and they will learn and they will behave differently. In Proverbs 15:31 it says, if you listen to constructive criticism, you'll be at home among the wise. Who likes constructive criticism? Right? Isn't that fun? Oh, give me more, I feel so good. But instead of being defensive and angry and turning against you, they can actually be grateful. Proverbs 9:8 says, correct the wise, listen to this, and they will love you for it. Maybe not in the moment. You've got to process some stuff, right? I want to make something really clear as we finish. It's not your fault if someone has abused your trust, betrayed it. But last week I mentioned about the law of second response that Jesus spoke of, and our responsibility starts with what we do next after we're betrayed. And in Romans 12:18, Paul says, and he gets really real with us, and he says, if it is possible, which means that sometimes it's not, but if it is possible, as much as it's up to you, live at peace with each other. That's moving from hurt to healing, to forgiveness, to restoration. and it moves from one person to two people. And working out whether you can trust someone. There's the 5 little boxes that we've talked about in this series of trust. If you're going to trust someone, you've got to work out, do they really understand you? Is there motives for you? Have they the ability to fulfill the trust that you're putting in them? Has their character the capacity to support the trust you're putting in? What's their track record? If you check those 5 things, that will help you a lot. And if you're married, and if you're struggling with the person you're married in this area, and you've hurt each other, then you may need outside help in the restoration of trust. That you may need a clear process and a level path that a strategy gives. And like Joseph did, if you're going to trust where a marriage has been a betrayal, you need to see evidence of a changed person. So next week we're going to finish this series and we're going to look at how not to make the same mistakes again when it comes to trust. Because you might be surprised how experience does not always teach us well. And yes, pain creates a response, but past hurts can actually make us more vulnerable to being hurt by trusting the wrong people again. And I don't want any of us to ever live life in that picture that we started off with, surrounded by no one because you trust no one. We're created, we're wired for trust. It's the most beautiful thing when trust comes back to us. It's the most human way to live. It's kingdom culture. It's how village life is designed. And so next week when we finish this, I'm jumping out of my skin with next week. I don't think ever have said this in Redgum, but I would really encourage you to bring someone with you next week. If you're thinking of a week that, is church going to be okay this week? You know, if you bring someone for the first time, you think, I hope that Coral doesn't cry when she does whatever it is, right? But you hope things are going to be good. Next week's going to be brilliant. And I would love you, if you want to bring someone next week. Yeah. It's going to be a special time of worship, honouring people, putting God in the centre of everything we do, prophetic words for people. It's going to be a great week, and we're going to finish this series. Barbecue lunch. Oh, really? That's a bit exciting. It is. Thank you for being part of our life. Yep, thank you. Pam, I love you being here. Right? You sneak little birthdays past us sometimes. You try to do that, but yeah. If we had a drafting gate, Coral's going to say wind up legs, but if we had a drafting gate at the front of this church, honestly, hand on heart, there's no one I would keep out. Right? There isn't. There's no one. I don't. Just every single one of you. God's put us together for something bigger than us. So let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you for putting funny little things called people together and saying, go love each other. What a challenge. And yet you have a way forward. Your word is so practical when it comes to every issue of life, including who to trust, how to recover from betrayals. Thank you, God, you have an answer for it. It's so practical. And as we do village life, as we grow together as a people, I thank you there's room at the table for more. That your love has no limitations. I thank you for that.